the task modules. So since we already have the background of Microsoft Teams tab, we will be kind of extending it to create our task modules. So myself, Nanddeep Nachan, I'm Microsoft MVP for Office Apps and Services, author of a couple of books, and on to the right hand side, here are a few social handles to get connected with me. So the agenda is like we will have the overview of task modules. Then we will see how we can invoke those task modules, how we can develop our own custom task modules, and then how we can use adaptive cards inside task modules. And then once we build our task module, how we can invoke that task module using deep links. So let's get started with task modules. So task modules are nothing but a model pop-up experience within Microsoft Teams. So whenever we want to get any kind of an inputs from the user, we can use this kind of an pop-ups or these task modules to get the input from the user and then process together. So with these task models, you can populate with either adaptive cards, or even you can embed your own content page or a web page that you can use in your custom Microsoft Teams app user experience. And then this task module allows you to create all those pop-up module experience within your Teams application. So you can use your custom HTML, JavaScript codes, and it can be shown as an iframe based widget. So the example that we are going to develop here is a YouTube player. So we will take the YouTube video ID and we will embed that so that we'll be able to play that YouTube video inside this task module. So task modules are built on the foundation of Microsoft Teams tab. So they are essentially kind of a tab inside a pop-up window. So if you already have built a tab, then you are already 90% ready for creating your task module. Okay. So let's have a look at the structure of task module. So firstly, we have a app icon. So we can use either the out of the box app icon which is available with your tab, or you can even apply your own app icons. Secondly, we have a short name which is representing your task module. And then third, we have a task module's title, which you can even refer to as a small description for this task module. Then fourth component we have as a close or cancel button to obviously close out that pop-up and get out of that window. Fifth, we have this entire area which is available for our web page or even adaptive cards hosting option. And then, sorry, sixth one is the one where we can host our adaptive cards. So, and seventh, we have the adaptive card buttons by which we'll be able to process the inputs which are coming from our users. So this is the basic task module structure that we have. And then how we can invoke these task modules. So these task modules can be invoked from tab, even from bots, or even using deep links. And in this particular session, we are going to invoke them from tab and then from deep link. For bot thing, I will leave it up to you to explore more, but the code line will remain the same. But all of these task modules can be invoked from tab, bots, or from a deep links. Again, obviously that each of these have their own structure. So invocation host is slightly different for everyone, because once you are invoking those from tab, the way you are invoking those from bots, or the way you are invoking those from deep links, from coding perspective, they will be slightly different. And then you can invoke those tab by using this Microsoft Team JavaScript SDK. So invoking from a bot will be something like submitting a special invoke messages, which will have your adaptive card, which you can send it to user for their action. And then lastly, we have this deep link, by which we can create our own special URL with that task module details in the query string. So here we don't have to perform any coding. We already have the task module ready, and then we will just formulate one special URL so that we can formulate that deep link. So once you click that deep link, you will be taken to that particular task module. It will open up a pop-up, and from there you will be able to perform your activities. So the development prerequisites will remain the same. We will need at least Node.js version 10 or higher. npm that comes along with node.js, so again version 6 or higher, gulp version 4 or higher, Yeoman generator version 3 or higher, and then even we need a Yeoman generator, that means yo teams, and then we will need Visual Studio Code to develop our task module. So let's see like how we can use adaptive cards in task module. So before we start again, for example, if you already have your web pages or content pages ready, which you have created using HTML or JavaScripts, even you can use those. But again, for example, if you are creating new task modules, then it is always preferable that you use these adaptive cards. The reason is again adaptive cards can be used across all of the apps and services across Office 365. They are responsive in nature, so that you don't have to take those extra efforts to make your web page or a content page responsive and place your controls and even bind all those controls to take the action on the user inputs. So for example, if you don't have your web pages or content pages with you already, and if you are creating these task modules fresh, then use adaptive cards. So then quickly have overview of adaptive cards. So this adaptive cards is kind of an UI container for short or related pieces of information. So these cards can have multiple properties, even attachments, and it can also include buttons that can trigger the card actions. So these adaptive cards are cross-platform specification for various Microsoft products. So they can be used from bots, Outlook, Microsoft Teams, even from Windows. So even from Windows 10 applications, we can invoke these adaptive cards. So again, these adaptive cards are kind of a recommended way for the Microsoft Teams development. So this Microsoft Teams supports multiple types of cards. So all of these cards are JSON based. So what is mean by that is we can have these adaptive cards created, and those will follow the JSON format. For example, if you're not familiar with adaptive cards, what you can do is you can probably go to or maybe let me open it. I think I have it open here. You can go to this adaptivecards.io. You can read out the documentation, or if you want to design your own card, just click get started. From here it will, sorry, not from here, this will take you to documentation, but here we have few samples available. So with the kind of activity you want to perform, either you can select the close matching sample that you have, or maybe even you can create your own. So let's say our adaptive cards is closer matching with this one. Okay, before that we have various adaptive cards available out of the box. For example, for a restaurant, just in case you want to show some kind of a menu, even for agenda, if you are working on any kind of an conferences, you want to show those agendas, this particular adaptive cards can be used. For example, you are working on expense reports, even this can be used. For example, if you want to show any kind of flight details or any kind of your journey details, these adaptive cards can be used. Again, for example, if you think that this is the adaptive card that you can start with, then you can click this, try it yourself. Once you go here, you will be able to customize those. So now we are here with which we can see like what are the containers that we have, what are the elements that we have. So each of the adaptive cards starts with the body, and then we have multiple items inside that. So for each of the item that you see here, it is either a text block or a column, or even it can be a button. For example, if you want to add something more to it, you can just drag and drop, and then it will adjust that block. And once you are happy with your design, you can copy this entire JSON, and then you can create your own adaptive card. Again, on to the right hand side, we have some sample data editor. That means if you just want to see how my data will look, let's say for example, you want to test out if the number of characters in this particular adaptive card will be going to be more than 100, then how my adaptive card will adapt to those kind of a situation. In that case, you can use this. Okay. Um, yeah, Miss, at least, yeah, for example, if you want to do it right within Microsoft Teams, in that case, we also have that possibility. So from these more apps, click App Studio. Once you get to the App Studio, we have this card editor here. So from this card editor, you can start developing your own card. So here we have various options for hero card, thumbnail card, and here we have the option for adaptive card. So once you click create, this will also give you kind of a playground wherein you will be able to create your own adaptive card. And once you start developing your adaptive card, the effects can be seen over here directly. So for example, if I just type bootcamp, you can see it. So but at least one thing is here you will have to create the adaptive card by your own. For example, if you are very much comfortable working with this JSON format, you can use this. Otherwise, adaptivecards.io is the option from where even you can drag and drop those um, text boxes or the controls whatsoever are needed for your development. Once it is done, even what you can do is if you want to test it out how it looks in Microsoft Teams, you can click send me this card, and this card will be posted to you in a chat window. So let me check if that has come. Yeah. So this is how it looks. Okay. So even from here you can test it out and see like how it is working in Microsoft Teams. All right. So that was the background about adaptive cards. So now let's see how we can use those adaptive cards in our task modules. So this is the same window that we seen like how we can create those adaptive cards with App Studio. So let's discuss about how we can use these adaptive cards for developing our task modules. Okay, so whenever we are using this adaptive card, what you can do is you can assign that particular JSON of the card to this task info property. So it is the only thing that we'll have to do, and your adaptive card will be hosted inside your task modules. So nothing to worry if you are not able to get this code, because once we do the hands-on, we are going to cover this. But at least inside this task module info, we just have to mention the card. For example, if you don't have adaptive card, but if you have your own web page content, in that case you can use the URL property and mention the URL to that page where you have your content, and then that particular content will be shown as an iframe inside your task modules. Okay, so with that, then probably we can move to the demo part, and we will create our own task modules. So let me go to my development environment. I already have Node version 10.19.0 installed. And if you want to follow all the instructions, they are already here. If you even you can go to the Teams channel where we have it in the instructions folder. If I okay, sorry, let me go to Teams. Where is my channel? Here. So even from here, once you are in the team, you can go to these instructions, and here it is the same page that is available. So you can follow these instructions maybe along with me or after my demo to get your hands-on completed. So first thing is that we are going to create these U teams, and as I said, these adaptive cards are nothing but Teams tab. So what we are going to do now is we will create our Teams tab. Okay, so let us go ahead and click U teams. So this particular app that we are going to develop will have a capacity to show the YouTube video. So you can just embed any of the YouTube video ID into this solution into the text box. So what we will do is we will have one text box wherein user can mention their YouTube ID. Probably I can show it to you how it looks. Okay, but yeah, maybe it is going to take some time. Okay, all right. So once we add this, here will be an text box. To that particular text box, we will type in the YouTube video ID. Once we click update and click show video, it is going to show us that, or it is going to play that YouTube video. Okay. All right. So with that background, let us go ahead and try to create our Teams project. So now that this solution is ready, maybe I will just call it as YouTube player underscore adaptive cards. Okay, and then we are going to use the current folder to place our files. So I will make that selection. This is the title of your Teams app project. So if you want to go ahead with this, you can have same name, or maybe you can type some other name. So we'll just type some name called as YouTube player. And then next thing is your company name, or by default, it will show the name of the user with which you're logged in. So I will say I will go ahead with that option, and from here we can choose the manifest version. So here we'll just select 1.6, okay, which is the latest one that is available. We don't have any Microsoft partner ID with us, so we will leave it as blank. Then, as I said, this task module is nothing but a tab inside Microsoft Teams. So we will go ahead with this default selection. We don't have to change the selection. So we will go ahead with the tab. So here the URL where we want to host our solution. By default, it will take the or compose this URL as the name of the solution that you have defined here. But we will maybe create it later on. So I will go ahead with this default selection. But at least for this particular demo, we will use ngrok because you already know how to deploy those to Azure. So again, option here, if you want to show the loading indicator, probably will say no because we don't have that much of complex data that will need any kind of a loading indicator. And then we don't want to go ahead with any of the test framework or initial test. Even we don't want to enable telemetry for our applications insights. The default tab name, you can, yeah, maybe you can go ahead with this same name, or yeah, this is okay. And then this one is going to be a personal or a static tab. Okay, so I will just click personal static, and then do you require Azure AD single sign-on support? Yes or no? Nothing matters. I will just say maybe yes, and go ahead with the default application ID association, and then even we will select the default one here. So this will take some time to scaffold the project. Once the project scaffolding is done, what we want to do is we want to use the latest version of Teams manifest and SDK that we have. So for that reason, we will run this command npm I Microsoft Teams -js, so that it will ensure that we are using the latest version of Teams manifest and SDK. So just before this demo, at least the version available was 1.7, but now that with the recent changes, just last week, this version is now updated to 1.8. So we will start using that latest version. So this should not take much time. Maybe you can utilize this time to even set up your project. If you want, you can open that URL from the tab, or either you can follow these same steps here. So if you already have any of the tab solution that you have created, you can easily extend that to that to a task module. Okay, all right. I think the solution is done. I will just type code dot to open this solution in the Visual Studio Code. And while it opens up, we will go ahead and type this command npm I Microsoft /teams -js, so that it will install so that it will install the latest version of Teams SDK. Okay, so now that this one is ready, let us go back to our solution. So since we have installed the latest version of Teams SDK, we'll have to make changes to our solution. So for that, first we will go to this manifest folder that we have. In the SRC, we have a manifest folder, and then here we have a manifest JSON file. So this is a place where we should update the version. So now here if you see the version is 1.6, so we will just change it to 1.8, which is the latest version. Okay, then let me check. Yeah, here is one more occurrence of that 1.6. We will change it to 1.8, and I guess that was the only things that we have here. Let me just do Control F for 1.6. Yeah, no results. So this is the one place where we have the um, version of Teams SDK stored, so which we have updated to 1.8 now. Next thing is that we will open up the gulp file. Here we have a gulp config JSON file. Again, this gulp config JSON file contains the schema, and the latest schema that we have here is of 1.6. So we will again add one entry so that we will make use of latest version, which is 1.8. So I just copied the same JSON. We will change it to 1.8 at both the places for version as well as the schema that it should refer to. And let's save the changes. So once this is done, I think most of the changes to the solution are done so that we can use the latest version of Teams SDK. Now that we will just before making any of the changes to the solution, we will test out the solution by running gulp ngrok serve. So we are just using the this ngrok for HTTP tunneling. So now that you can see that it has generated one ngrok URL, but the application is still kind of building and running. So let us wait for some time to get it compiled and run and be ready. Okay, meanwhile, let me copy this ngrok URL. So before deploying this solution to Teams, what we will do is we will test out this solution on the local first. So for that, you can copy the URL from ngrok that has been given. Maybe let me close these tabs and just paste it in the browser. Now that still the ngrok is not active, so that's the reason we are getting this tunnel connection issue. Now I think, yeah, now I think it has started running. So if I go back, refresh this page, yeah, now we have our application running on ngrok. Next thing that since we have our tab running at this particular location, index.html, even we can go ahead and test that out whether that is working fine in the browser. Okay, okay, now that we have our tab, if you click that button, it is working. So at least we have our tab working now. Now that we will extend this tab as a task module inside the Teams app. So for that, again, we have two options. Either we can use the existing web page or content page we have, but in this case, we are going to use some kind of an adaptive card. So I already have the adaptive card for okay, for this YouTube player. So here we just have a simple text box which will help us to get the YouTube video ID from the user, and once we get that, we have a button down here which will help us to update that YouTube video player ID. Okay, so we will use this JSON inside our code. So for that, I will maybe close this out, the things which we don't need. Again, inside this app folder, we have a scripts folder. Here we have the solution name that we are going to refer to. So this is the place from where we will be invoking our JSON or that adaptive card. So firstly that we will go ahead and create maybe one file wherein we can store that JSON. So to this place, we are going to create one JSON file. We will call it as maybe YouTube uh, YouTube selector card. Okay, dot JSON, and we will paste out that JSON. Again, for example, if you want to see how this JSON looks like, you can go back here to the Teams tab, to the App Studio, then to the card editor. So maybe we can edit this card editor which we just created, and I will replace this entire text with this. And now that you can see that this is how it looks. So once we click update, it will just execute some action for which we'll have to write the code. But at least this is the UI for our adaptive card. Okay, so we have that adaptive card now, and we are going to use that adaptive card inside our solution. Okay, so for that reason, since this adaptive card is something like this, and it will help us to get the ID of the YouTube video, what we will do is firstly we will create some variable in the state. So for that, we will just type it as YouTube. And then I will define it as a nullable string. Okay, so now that we have one variable defined into the state into which we can add our value of the user selection. Okay, next thing is that we need to update the render method so that we can display out that card. So we have this render method which is at the moment showing something like this is your tab, hello and undefined and all those things. These are coming from here. This is that hello and state.name, which is the value which you're seeing. But now that we will change this render method so that we can render our YouTube video selector. So for that, again I will go back here and I will entirely replace this render method with the new code. Okay, so now this is the new UI that we have, wherein we are asking user to input the video ID, and then we are invoking the adaptive card from there. So now you can see that we don't have input uh, control available. We just have text and buttons. So for that we will go at the top and even we will include that input. Okay, so now we have input which is imported to our solution. So now the error has been resolved and we have an input here, and then we have two buttons. One is to change the video ID and another one is to show the video. So now that we will go ahead and write the code for these two buttons. So on click of this particular button, what it should do is it should show that adaptive card, and then on the second button it should play that YouTube video. Okay, so for that again I have a code ready which I will go and paste it here. Sorry, let me check. Yeah, firstly we will go ahead with this on change adaptive card. Okay, so let me paste it out and then I will explain you the code. So this is the code that will be used whenever there is a change into the video adaptive card. So what we are doing is we are loading that adaptive card JSON that we have created. So this is that JSON which we are loading into our application, and then we are looping through each of the container inside that JSON. So we have various containers here like type, items, actions. So we are looping through all of those, and whenever we get the type equal to container, that means if I go back here, so here we have those types as a containers. So all of those selections here you can see we have two containers here, and out of which first container is a text box and another is again a text block and input text. So we will go ahead in the container and we will try to find out the item with ID YouTube video ID, so which is here. So what we are going to do is we are going to take the value of this particular ID, right? So now that we have got that control, and then we are simply setting the value for this particular control, which is our text box, to the value that we have defined by user, which we have stored into our state. Okay, and from there we are going to invoke this task module info, and this is the same code that we have seen previously. So if I again move back to my presentation, okay, this is the code which we were referring to, and now that we are referring that adaptive card right inside here. Okay, let it load. Yeah, so this is the same code that we have seen when we were at the theory part. And then what we are doing is we have this submit handler, which will help us to submit this YouTube video ID as a result to the task module, and we are doing that with the help of this particular code. So we are just simply having Microsoft Teams.task.start task, and then we are submitting this task module info along with this submit handler. And I guess this was the same code that we have seen. Okay. So at least this is the background behind this code. Now that we will write another code which will help us to show that video ID, sorry, YouTube video. Okay, so for that we have a method called as show video, okay, or on show video. So for that I will copy these two methods and let me explain it to you. So we have this main method called as on show video, wherein we are simply getting the value of page. So the um, reason of having the page here is that I wanted to show you the capabilities that even we can invoke the adaptive cards from our task module. At the same time, even if you already have your web page or a content page ready, so right now let's say we have our web page called as player.html, which we have uh, created in advance, and now that we want to use this page inside our task modules, so even we can use that. It is not just that we can only use adaptive cards, but even we can use our HTML, JavaScript, CSS, all those things inside the adaptive cards. So for that reason we are using this. So we are going to invoke again this task module info and trying to run this start task. So whenever we click on that on show video button, it will going to open this player.html. Okay, and then to this we are passing a query string with vid, that means video id. So this app root here will simply get us to the absolute URL of the hosting. So that means it will be just window.location.protocol followed by the window.location.host and then followed by this. So it will help us to get the absolute URL to our page. So this was the very simple code. Now the next thing is that we will have to create this player.html itself. So for that reason, again, we will add that player.html. So let me copy this. So we have this src app, then we have web. So all of your web content can go inside this web. So in this web we again have the folder created with our solution name. Inside this we already have this index.html, which we have seen here. So now that what we are going to do is we are going to add new file here with player.html, and this is the YouTube video player that we are going to develop. So we already have that code with us. Let me copy it here and we'll go through it. So this is the simple HTML page which you might have designed very much early. So here we have a head section, then some styling for our YouTube video, and then we have the body with ID of embed container, and then we have some script on this particular body so that we will get that URL which we are setting from here, which user has set into the state. So we will get that VID, which is our query string parameter, and we will simply call youtube.com/embed that video ID, so that now that we have a, a complete URL to YouTube video, and then we will set some height, width, frame border, and full screen kind of an parameters on this. And once we have all of this element ready with us, which is kind of an iframe, we are loading that iframe inside this particular div by running this code document.getElement by id, this embed container, and we are appending this iframe as a child to that particular div. So we will have a div, and inside that div we will be running our YouTube video. So at least that was the code, or the simple code that we have. Now that if we go to the package, here we should have the latest package. So what I can do is, since we were doing all those changes when it was running, you can see that it is failed now because it must have not got the methods which were needed. So I will again run this gulp ngrok serve so that our application will be up and running. And then what we can do is, we can go ahead with the deployment, and all of the deployment steps have been mentioned here in the instructions. So for that reason, again, just like you'll have to go to that package folder and upload this zip, nothing else. So we will open up that more apps, and then we will, since we created this as a personal app, we will just upload it for me or my teams. We will select that zip and we will upload it to teams. So let me check if it is running. Okay, it is running. Linting is complete. Let's just wait for that ngrok to get started onto this host. Again, one thing with ngrok is, like, since we are using this free version of ngrok, every time it will generate a new ID for this ngrok. But for example, if you want to avoid this, in that case, you can take the paid version of ngrok and you can purchase your own domain with ngrok, so that you don't have to make changes to your application every time, but you will be able to use your custom domain along with ngrok. So now that we have our ngrok running on port 3007, so I can go to this app studio again. Sorry, not to the app studio. I will click this more apps from here, and we have our package which is created here. So I will copy that path. We'll click upload custom app. Since we have created this as a personal tab, I will click upload for me. Let us navigate to that folder where we have our zip. Click open, and now we have our tab, which is our um, task module. So once we click add, if everything goes fine, we should be able to see the YouTube video player. So it is loading. Okay, now that we have it, I will maybe pin this to taskbar, so that it will be here every time. Now I can click change YouTube video ID, and here we'll be able to add YouTube player or YouTube video ID. So let me go back to YouTube. So once you are to the YouTube, you can open any of the video, and this is the ID that we have. So I will open up and I will update that ID here. So this is the ID of YouTube video player. Now that ID from state has been copied to this adaptive card. And once you click now show video, it should pick up from that, pass it to our HTML, which is loading, and from here we will be able to run our YouTube video. Okay, so this was very simple example how we can make use of adaptive cards as well as our web page content, which is maybe kind of an HTML, and then we can use it. Okay, so I will ask everyone to follow the instructions from here to get it started. But before that, just again quick demo of how we can invoke these task modules from deep links. So deep links are nothing but which can directly take you to that particular location. So deep links are kind of an URL that contains specific values that Microsoft Teams uses to invoke that particular task module. And then the format of this deep link is something like teams.microsoft.com/l/task followed by your app ID. Then URL is your task info URL, which is your ngrok ID, ngrok URL right now. Then you can specify the height, width, and other parameters. So just to see how it works, I will go back here. I think I already had added it to one of my team here. Okay, so let me check if I can edit this. Okay, yeah, I can edit. So here, if I go to link, I can copy this link and probably we can change this link itself. But for you, you can create your own link. So again, this link is simple. Maybe I can copy that link and show it to you how it has been composed. Okay. So this is the link that we have, and this is the app ID. So now the app ID, you can take it either from manifest.json, or if you want to get the app ID, if it is configurable, in that case you can extract this zip that we have created. You can open this manifest.json, and here the ID is your app ID. So you can copy this, paste it to this particular app ID. Okay, and then the URL, this is your ngrok URL, and since this ngrok is now running onto, let me check where it is running. Yeah, it is running on C9 something this. So I will copy that, I will paste it here. So this is my entire ngrok URL where my task is running at the moment. So this is the entire link to the player HTML what I have. I will copy it here. Video ID, I will just put any of the video ID that we want to show. We can specify the height, width, then the title. So now I will copy this entire URL. I will go to here and I will paste it here. So for example, if you want to send this as a message to anyone, it can be done. So this is nothing but a deep link. So now if I click on this deep link, it should open up that same YouTube video player. And now the YouTube video player is here, from where we'll be able to play that YouTube video, right? So I think, yeah, that was all I wanted to cover. Let me check if I missed anything. But yeah, miss again on the resources front, you can go back to this UTeams documentation. For task modules, you can refer to this task modules URL from docs.microsoft.com. And yeah, don't forget to fill out the survey. Yeah, miss, at least that was all from my side, which I wanted to cover. But again,